Hello watch enthusiasts. Now today I'm going to show you that Seiko which I mentioned in my last video and which I asked you to name and to guess what I'd bought from the Seiko range. Now before I show you actually I'd like to explain my reasoning behind buying another watch just after buying my Oris, and it's a twofold sort of thing, a twofold reason if you will. Now, firstly, I usually own one sort of modern dive watch and one vintage-looking dive watch for my collection. And after buying the Aquis, I realised that I needed a sort of a secondary dress dive watch for the collection. Now, I particularly like the look of the Oris Carl Brashear model, that limited edition bronze cased. Version of the Diver 65, and it is a beautiful watch, and it pays homage to a really a historic diver, the first black American diver for the military, and it's made entirely of that bronze alloy, I believe. I don't believe it's pure bronze, and I then realised that I then, for a variety of reasons, I didn't have the money anymore to buy that watch. So I considered a Diver 65 from Oris, but I didn't like it as much as the original, the different Carl Brashear limited edition version, because I think I liked that sort of gold aspect to it, the gold details. The gold case I think was a bit much for me though, but I recently looked on some forums and so on, and found some rather worrying photographs of these bronze cased watches, as you can see now in the video, where they go completely blue as a result of their reaction with oxygen, which I don't think anyone anticipated the reaction to be quite so obvious. We all expected the patina to come quite slowly. So I am quite pleased I didn't buy a bronze-cased watch. So in the end, I spotted this watch on eBay, and I bought it on the spur of the moment. So this is quite an interesting Seiko. I appreciate I'm dragging on a bit with this intro, and one which I hope you'll like. So this watch is the Seiko 55 Fathoms. So this is the modified Seiko 5 100-meter sort of pseudo dive watch with that custom Blancpain style dial, which I think looks absolutely gorgeous on this watch and suits it perfectly. Now, before I look at the watch itself, I will show you the original dial this watch had in the first place, because I think it is important to show you what the watch would have originally looked like. Now it's packed in this this little wrapped bundle. Just unwrap this for you. Now I'm avoiding touching it with my fingers to avoid fingerprints on it, because I really don't want to spoil this dial. But here it is, the Seiko 5 Sports dial. Now, I have nothing against this dial, but I find the Blancpain 55 Fathoms version altogether a far more elegant design and dial. So I prefer the watch with that. So I'll get rid of the case of the box and show you the watch. So this watch is very reminiscent of watches of the past in its design and in its functionality as well, and shares a lot of things in common with the 50 Fathoms, the original one from 1953. Now the bezel is acrylic, which is something I rather like because it gives that sort of gleam of ceramic, but retains sort of an old-fashioned look, so it will scratch over time, but can be repolished if necessary. Equally, it won't scratch clean off like paint will, which is something I like. Now this is the 57 version of this Seiko 5, which means that it has these gold accents. So those are notable on the bezel and on the dial, which I showed you before, and also the hands. Now it has a double-domed Hardlex crystal. It's quite subtly domed, but still domed nonetheless, and gives a very nice sort of reflection on the dial. Now the top of the lugs are brushed. They have quite a gentle brushing, and then the sides are entirely polished, which do attract scratches, but it's a vintage-looking watch, so I think it's fine for it to have scratches and nicks on it. It sort of gives character to the piece. Now, the movement itself is a 23 jewel in-house Seiko movement, and so far has kept superb time. I was really chuffed with the timekeeping of this watch, because I think in the last week I've owned it for, it's gained 10 seconds. So I really am pleased with that. It wasn't something I expected with this watch. Now this watch doesn't have a screw-down crown. The crown is free to turn, and it doesn't have hacking or hand winding either. But there are some features about this watch which it does share with the original 50 Fathoms. For example, the original 50 Fathoms was water resistant to 50 fathoms, the original 91.5 meters of water resistance, and didn't have a screw-down crown because Rolex owned the patent for that. Whereas this watch has 100-meter water resistance and also has the same or similar twin seal crown without the screw down, and is water resistant to 55 fathoms, as the dial would suggest. Now, the back of the case is open to this undecorated Seiko movement, but it does give a very sort of rugged, very no-nonsense sort of look, due to that semi-unfinished quality to the back of the watch. And whereas most Swiss movements go with a bead-blasted look, this watch is brushed. This movement is brushed even, and polished, which does lend to quite a nice aesthetic. Now the balance wheel is oddly enough at 9 o'clock rather than the ETA style of having it at 12, which gives a nice change, and it is a nice thing to have in the collection, to have a slightly different movement, one which isn't so expensive to service. Now the bezel isn't loomed, and that's my only criticism really of the bezel, is that you can't really see it in the dark, but I suppose watches in this price point don't have very good loom on the bezels anyway, so in most situations it won't make much of a difference. Now the bezel is a 60-click bezel, and a lot of people have commented on the fact that it's quite loose. As you can see, it turns very freely, but it gives a very positive sort of click, and feels very, well, it feels high quality, actually. I was trying to think of another way of putting it, but it does feel high quality. And this polished ring between the crystal and the bezel lends for a very pleasing aesthetic. Now the hands, like the original 50 Fathoms, are sword-style hands, and I particularly like the fact that the second hand is designed so that the loom pip, that little triangle, is placed quite a long way from the tip of the second hand, and does give a very unique sort of aesthetic, which I haven't really seen on other watches, which usually place their loom pip very close to the end of the hand. Now that dial takes inspiration from the original 50 Fathoms and has that segmented style in sort of quarters. Equally, the writing is reminiscent of the original 50 Fathoms too, and all the details on the dial are in gold with little red 55 just in the script at 6 o'clock. Now, something which I do like about this watch is the fact that it has these particular types of grips on the bezel. Now, these also have been commented on by a few people. They're very simple design, but they offer very, very good grip, and do make it very easy to turn, which is a blessing really with a bezel like this. Now, something I also should have commented on when I was talking about the bezel was that it has very, very minimal play. There's very little play in this bezel, which at this price point is very, very good to know and to have. Now, in terms of wearability, this watch has a 22mm lug width, and in fits, well, I tend to wear this watch on NATOs, and does tend to look great on them. So, for example, this black NATO is just a simple black NATO. It has these sort of bronze keepers as well, courtesy of me brushing brushing the keepers from a polished finish, not realising they weren't stainless steel. So as a result, now they are bronze, but I have no problems with that. I think it actually looks quite nice with this watch in particular. Now, as you can see, this watch, well, this strap really does bring out the gold on the dial, because, of course, the black matches the strap, so all these details do pop out, which lends to a really quite nice look, and one which I tend to wear, actually. I tend to wear this watch on this strap. Now, otherwise, I shan't put them on to waste time, but as you can see, a beige strap also goes very, very well with this watch, giving it a sort of slightly more military look, slightly more vintage military look, which I like a lot, bearing in mind this watch was commissioned originally. The 50 Fathoms was commissioned by the French Navy. Now, the simple grey and black bond strap also looks great on this watch, because the grey will also match with the steel colour of the watch case and bezel, thus bringing out those colours rather than accentuating the gold if you want to go for a more subtle and subdued look. Now, this watch also looks wonderful on a distressed leather strap. Now, in this case, I've taken the strap off my Timex, which is also a 22mm strap, and as you can see, it really does suit the old-fashioned look of this watch, which harks back, obviously, to that 1953 dive watch. Now, I've taken the PVD buckle off the strap and instead replaced it with the Page and Cooper buckle, even from their rubber NATO, which I wear a lot, actually, but I'll show that in a later video. And I think this buckle looks a lot better with a stainless steel finished case, rather than the black PVD, which really has to match the case. Now, I'll show you this watch on the wrist in order to demonstrate how it fits. Now, the lug-to-lug is 48mm, despite being a 42mm diameter watch. And for me, I find that any watch with a lug-to-lug of more than 50mm is too large for me. So this fits in that sweet spot of watches which just about sit right on my wrist. So as you can see, the lugs don't protrude over my wrist, like I've had problems with other 42mm watches, and it actually has a shorter lug-to-lug than my Orient. So it still looks quite well. The circular part of the case definitely looks larger than it is because of these short lugs. It makes a sort of optical illusion, making the whole case actually look larger than it is, despite still fitting beautifully on the wrist, which is something I really do like about this watch. Now, I will just flip to a Loom shot in the dark, so I'll just turn out the lights and I'll be back with you in a moment. Now, I've now lit up the Loom for about 30 seconds with a UV torch, and as you can see, the Loom on the hands with that Seiko Lumibrite Loom looks absolutely superb. It's very, very bright, even on the second hand, and from experience, this Loom will last a good 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours. The Loom on the dial isn't quite so good, with the Loom on the 12, 6, 9, and 3 being brighter. It doesn't seem to look like that in the video, but it is definitely brighter in person than on the other indices on this watch. So overall, this has excellent loom, so I would advise it if you are in need of a watch with good nighttime readability. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, do feel free to email me or put a question in the comments down below. So thank you very much for watching. Do please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more watch-related videos and other content on this channel. So thank you very much for watching. This is I'm on the Watch Guy, over and out.